Hi friends, my name is Maruti and I'm the co-founder of Krakow. In this video, we'll be looking at the quant solutions of XAT 2019. We'll be looking at all the 26 questions and we'll be giving detailed solutions for each one of them. If you have any doubts regarding any of the questions or if you want us to do any other videos, please feel free to comment below the video. We also have uploaded the previous papers of XAT, I think starting from 2010 to 2019. All the papers have detailed solutions. You can take them for free in an exam pattern. The link for taking them is also given in the description below. So let's get started. In this question, it is given that there are 5 employees in a company called A, B, C, D and E. Each of them got 2 hikes in 2 consecutive years. For example, A got P% and P plus 1%, B got P plus 2 and P minus 1 and so on. If you see, the sum of the 2 hikes is the same. The sum of the 2 hikes for each one of them is 2P plus 1. Because P plus 1 is P plus 1, P plus 2 plus P minus 1 is also 2P plus 1 and so on. Now we are also told that at the end of the 2 years, the salary of each one of them is the same and we are required to find out who got the least hike. So at the end of the 2 years, all of them had the same salary. So we had to find out who had the highest salary at the start of the 2 years. So let us assume that the salary of each one of them is A, B, C, D and E. We are required to find out which of them is the highest at the start. When your salary is the highest, then you will get the least amount of hike if the salary is the same at the end of 2 years. So if you look at it, for example, A into 100 plus P by 100, let us assume that the final salary of all of them is F. It is the same, into 100 plus P plus 1 by 100 is equal to F, or A is equal to 100. We are multiplying this 100 and 100 to the other side, so it will be 10,000 F by 100 plus P into 101 plus P. This is the value of A. Similarly, the value of B will be 10,000 F by, this is the salary of A, so this will be 102 plus P into 99 plus P. The value of C will be 10,000 F by 103 plus P into 98 plus P. And the value of D will be 10,000 F by 104 plus P into 97 plus P, and the value of E will be 10,000 F by 105 plus P into 96 plus P. Now we are required to find out which of these 5 numbers is the highest. If you notice, the numerator is the same for each one of them and it is the denominator which is differing. So we'll find out which of the following denominators is the lowest. Because the numerator is the same, whenever the denominator is the lowest, then the total fraction will be the highest. So we'll just calculate the denominator. The denominator again of each one of them is quite similar. So this will be P square plus 201 P plus 100 into 101. Similarly for B, the denominator will be P square plus 201 P plus 102 into 99. And for C, it will be only the denominator P square plus 201 P plus 103 into 98. And for D, it will be P square plus 201 P plus 104 into 97. And lastly, it will be P square plus 201 P plus 105 into 96. As you can see, for each of the denominators, the first 2 terms are the same, so we can ignore them. So we'll have to look at which of the final terms is the lowest. Now again, the final terms, if you observe closely, the sum of the 2 terms is the same. That is 100 plus 101 is 201, 102 plus 99 is 201, 103 plus 98 is 201, 104 plus 97 is 201 and 105 into 96 is 201. So the sum is the same. So the number which will be the least will be 105 into 96 because both of them are furthest away from each other. And in fact, the highest will be 100 into 101. So for these terms, the denominator of E will be the lowest, and as the numerators of all of them are the same, E as a whole, the fraction will be the highest. And because E is highest, the amount of hike that E got will be the lowest amongst the 5. So the answer that you're looking for is E. In general, when you're solving these kind of questions, to solve them fast, if you are seeing a pattern, the pattern that we are observing over here is that sum of each of them is the same, then only compare the first term and the last term, because in most likelihood they will have the extremes. So if you just compare A and E and you can figure out that E is larger than A, you can answer the question faster. Anyway, the answer in this case is E.
The secret to crack CAT is taking a lot of marks. We at Cracku give all the previous year's CAT, XAT and IFT papers in the actual exam format. Also, if you just Google Cracku free CAT mark, you can find 3 free CAT marks in the latest exam pattern. You can take them and get detailed analysis.
In this question, it is given that there is a firm, it has 5 clerks and it pays each one of them 15,000 each, and it has 3 assistants who are paid 40,000 each, and it has an accountant who is paid 66,000. We are required to find out that the mean salary minus the median salary is equal to how much? That is, mean minus median is equal to how much? Before we get into it, let us first discuss what is a mean. Mean is just the average of all the terms in the set. In this case, there are 9 employees, of which there are 5 who are paid 15,000 each. There are 3 who are paid 40,000 each, and there is 1 guy who is paid 66,000 each. So if you calculate the mean of all their salary, the average of all their salaries, you are going to get the mean. What is median? When you arrange all the elements of the set in an ascending order, you have to pick the middle term. For example, in this case, there are 5 15s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 3 40s. 40, 40, 40, and there is 1 66. So all these are arranged in ascending order, and you have to pick the term which is in the middle. So because there are 9 terms, the 5th term, which is the middle term, will be the median. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the median is 15,000. 6, 7, 8, 9. And what will happen if the number of terms is even? So in this case, there are 9 terms, so there is only one middle term, which is 15. In case there are even number of terms, then you take the average of the middle 2 terms. So for example, if there are 10 terms, you have to first find out the 5th term, and you have to find out the 6th term, and then you take their average. That will be the median of the set. But in this case, because there are only 9 terms, you just need to pick the middle term, which is the 5th term, which is 15,000. So the median is known, this is 15,000. Now let us calculate the mean. Mean is just the weighted average of all the salaries, which is 5 into 15 plus 3 into 40 plus 66 by the total number of employees, which is 9. 5 into 15 is 75, 3 into 40 is 120 plus 66 by 9. 75 plus 120 is 195 plus 66 is 261 by 9, which is equal to 29k. So the mean is 29k. The median, which is the 5th element when arranged in ascending order, is equal to 15k. It is this element. So the mean exceeds the median by 29k minus 15k, which is equal to 14k. So the answer that we are looking for is 14,000. In this question, it is given that there are 2 numbers A and B. They are inversely proportional to each other. If A increases by 100%, then B decreases by how much? So whenever you are told that there are 2 terms which are inversely proportional to each other, in this case A and B, what is meant is that A into B is a constant. So if A increases, B decreases. In this case, A increases by 100%. So the new value of A is 2A. Into, suppose the new value of B is say B1. So 2A into B1 will still be equal to A into B, where B and A are the original values. Now, so using this, you can calculate that B1, that is the new value of B, is B by 2. So B, which was initially B, decreases to B by 2. So the decrease in B is 50%. This is equal to b minus b by 2 by b, which is equal to 1 by 2, which is equal to 50%. So the answer you are looking for is 50%. This is very straightforward once you know that whenever two numbers are told to be inversely proportional to each other, their product remains constant. In this question, we are given that cubed root of 7 to the power a into 35 to the power b plus 1 into 20 to the power c plus 2 is a whole number, and we are required to find out which of the following statements is consistent with it. So let us assume that this is equal to k, and let us simplify k cube. We are just trying to remove the cubed root and try to factorize it according to the prime numbers. So this will be 7 to the power a into 35 can be written as 5 into 7. So this will be 5 to the power b plus 1 into 7 to the power b plus 1. Both of them together will be 35 into 20 can be written as 4 into 5. So this will be 4 to the power c plus 2 into 5 to the power c plus 2. 4 is again 2 square. So if you simplify this and segregate all the prime factors together, you will understand that k cube is equal to a plus b plus 1 into 5 to the power b plus c plus 3 into 2 to the power 2c plus 4. This is k cube, and for k to be a whole number, each of these prime factors should have a power which is a multiple of 3. Only then will k, when you take the cubed root of each one of them to the power 1 by 3 to get k, each of them will be a whole number. So we know that a plus b plus 1 has to be a multiple of 3. Similarly, b plus c plus 3 has to be a multiple of 3, and 2c plus 4 has to be a multiple of 3. So if you look at each one of them, let us go with c because we know that 2c plus 4 has to be a multiple of 3. So let us look at each of the options and try to eliminate them based on c first. When you look at the first option and you input c is equal to 1, 2c plus 4 is 6, so 2c plus 4 is a multiple of 3. So c is equal to 1 is possible. If you look at the second option, when c is equal to 2, 2c plus 4 will be 8, which is not a multiple of 3, so this can be rejected. Similarly, option c also can be rejected because even here c is equal to 2. D and E, both of them have c is equal to 1, so that is fine. Now let us look at the second condition, that is b plus c plus 3 has to be a multiple of 3. We already know that c is equal to 1. So b plus 4 has to be a multiple of 3. Again, if you look at the first option, when you input b is equal to 1, b plus 4 is 5, which is not a multiple of 3, so b can't be 1. Now if you look at the option D, again b is equal to 1, and again b plus 4 is not a multiple of 3, so we'll reject this also. In option E, b is equal to 2, so b plus 4 is 6, which is a multiple of 3, so this is fine. Now let us see if when you input a is equal to 3, the first condition is also satisfied, that is a plus b plus 1 should be a multiple of 3. Now a is equal to 3 plus 2 is 5 plus 1 is 6, which is a multiple of 3. So all the three conditions are satisfied when you are inputting this set of values, that is a is equal to 3, b is equal to 2 and c is equal to 1. So the correct answer in this case is option E. We just need to figure out that the powers of each one of them, 7, 2 and 5, should be multiples of 3 for the number k to be a whole number. And if you look at all the options, you will find out that only option E satisfies all the three conditions. So the correct answer is option E. In this question, it is given that there is a gold cylinder which is melted and the molten material is molded into the form of identical cones. We are told that the height of each cone is half the height of the original cylinder, and the area of the circular base of each cone is 1/5 that of the circular base of the cylinder, and we are required to find out how many such conical ingots can be made. So let us assume that the required number is n. Let us also assume that the height of the original cylinder is h and the radius of the original cylinder is r. Now let us assume that this is for the cylinder. Now for the cone, let us assume that the height of each of the identical cones is h1 and the radius of each of the identical cones is r1. So in this case, the volume of each of the identical cone will be 1 by 3 into pi r1 square h1. This is because when the radius of a cone is r1 and the height is h1, it will be 1 by 3 pi r square h. That will be the volume of the cone. Now the original volume of the cylinder is pi r square h. Now as the volume doesn't change, pi r square h, which is the volume of the cylinder, will equal n, which is the number of identical cones that are formed, into 1 by 3 pi r1 square h1. We are also given some new additional information, which is that the height of each cone, that is h1, is equal to half the height of the original cylinder, that is h by 2. We are also told that the area of the circular base of each cone, that is pi r1 square, is equal to 1/5 of the circular base of the cylinder. This is 1/5 into pi r square. So we are given that h1 is equal to h by 2 and r1 square is equal to r square by 5. We can substitute these two in the equation that we have. So pi r square h is equal to n into 1 by 3 into pi. Instead of r1 square, we'll put r square by 5 into r square by 5. And instead of h1, we'll put h by 2. Now you can cancel the common terms, which is pi r square h, and you'll get that n, which is the number of cones, is equal to 3 into 5 into 2, which is equal to 30. So the number of identical cones that can be formed using this golden cylinder is 30. This question involves complex numbers. It is given that x square plus x plus 1 is equal to 0, and we are required to find out the value of x to the power 2018 plus x to the power 2019. So if you're looking at x square plus x plus 1 is equal to 0, one of the things that we can solve it using multiple ways, but the way that we will use is we'll multiply both sides by x minus 1. So we are saying x minus 1 into x square plus x plus 1 is also equal to 0. The reason we are multiplying it with x minus 1 is because this expansion is x cube minus 1. So x cube minus 1 is equal to 0 or x cube is equal to 1. So whenever x square plus x plus 1 is equal to 0, x cube is equal to 1. Now x to the power 2018 is equal to x to the power 2016 into x square. Now x to the power 2016 is equal to x cube. This is a multiple of 3, 2016. So x to the power 2016 will also equal 1. So this will be 1 into x square. So x to the power 2018 is equal to x square, and x to the power 2019, you can note that 2019 is a multiple of 3. It will be actually equal to 673. X cube to the power 673 is equal to x to the power 2019. So as x cube is equal to 1, even x to the power 2019 is equal to 1. So the required sum is x to the power 2018 plus x to the power 2019 will equal x square plus 1. But from the given equation, x square plus 1 is equal to minus x. That is because x square plus x plus 1 is equal to 0. So the answer that we are looking at is option C. In this question, it is given that there is a transcontinental train that goes across several time zones, and all the timings are given in the local times of the respective cities. Now the average speed between any two cities is the same in both the directions. So what this basically tells us is that the time taken, the actual time taken for the train to travel between any of these two stations is the same, even if it is going in one direction or the other direction. So if you look at the city names, the first city is Z, the second city is Y, the third city is V, the fourth city is S, and the last city is R. Now let us look at the time it takes. We'll ignore the fact that there are time zone differences. Let us just calculate the absolute time that it takes when it departs from one city and it arrives in the next city. So we'll calculate it from both the directions and then see what is the time difference. Then we'll be able to calculate the time zone difference between the two cities. So for example, between Z and Y, it departs Z at 6 a.m. and it arrives at 7:45 a.m. So we are saying that to go from Z to Y, it is taking 1 hour and 45 minutes. Similarly, after it departs Y at 7:50 a.m., it arrives at 2:45 p.m. So the time difference is, the absolute time difference is 4 hours plus 2 hours, 6 hours and 55 minutes. This is 8, this will be 6 hours and 55 minutes. Now it leaves V at 2:50 p.m. and it arrives in S at 7:40 p.m. So the time difference over here is 4 hours and 50 minutes. Similarly, it leaves S at 7:45 p.m. and it arrives in R at 10:40 p.m. So the time difference is 2 hours and 55 minutes. Now let us look at it in the other direction, that is this direction. We'll calculate the absolute difference in the times. So for example, it leaves R at 8 a.m. and it arrives at S at 12:55 p.m. So the time it takes over here is 4 hours and 55 minutes. It leaves S at 11:55. It leaves S at 1 p.m. and it arrives in V at 11:50 p.m. So the time it takes is 10 hours and 50 minutes. So this it is taking 10 hours and 50 minutes. Similarly, it leaves VAC, that is V, at 11:55 p.m. and it arrives in Y the next day at 10:50 a.m. So the time it takes is 10 hours and 55 minutes. These are the absolute times, so they might be different. So if you are looking at Y, it leaves Y at 10:55 a.m. and it arrives in Z at 12:40 p.m. So the time difference that it takes is 1 hour and 45 minutes. So suppose there is no difference in time zone. Now if you consider Z and Y, the absolute time that it takes to go from Z to Y is 1 hour 45 minutes either ways. So you can conclude that there is no time zone difference between Z and Y. But if you look at Y and V, to go from Y to V it is taking 6 hours 55 minutes, but to come back from V to Y it is taking 10 hours 55 minutes. So the difference in the absolute times is 4 hours from one direction to the other direction. So what we can conclude is, while going from Y to V it is gaining 2 hours, and while coming back from V to Y it is losing 2 hours. So the time difference between V and Y is 2 hours. Similarly, between V and S, to go from V to S it is taking 4 hours 50 minutes, but to come back from S to V it is taking 10 hours 50 minutes. The difference in the times that is taken in both the directions is 6 hours. So the time difference is 3 hours. So while going it is gaining 3 hours, and while coming back it is losing 3 hours. Similarly, from S to R, the difference in the absolute times taken is 4 hours 55 minutes minus 2 hours 55 minutes is 2 hours. So the time difference is 1 hour. Now let us look at the questions. Which of the following pairs of cities are in the same time zone? We have already concluded that Z and Y are in the same time zone because the absolute time it takes to go from either of the directions is the same. So the correct answer is Z and Y is C, option C. Now let us look at the second question. What is the total time taken in minutes by the train to go from Z to Y? So it leaves Z at 6 a.m. and it arrives at 10:40. So the absolute time it takes is 10:40 p.m. that is 22:40 minus 6, that is 16:40. This is without considering the time zone difference. But you can see that there are 2 hours here, 3 hours here and 1 hour here, that is 6 additional hours that you need to add. So the actual time it takes is 22:40. Another way to look at it is you can conclude it from the other side also. But over here you will have to subtract 6 hours. So for example, it arrives at 12 hours 40 minutes the next day. So 12 hours 40 minutes is 36:40 minus 8. This, if you can see, is 8 a.m. is when it left the earlier day. So the absolute time difference that you can see is 28:40. But from this you will have to subtract the time zone difference because this time got added. So 28:40 minus 6 is again 22:40. So the correct answer is option A. Now let us look at the last question. what time is it in Y when it is 12 noon at SAB. So SAP is the third station, and we need to find out what is the time it is in Y. You can see that over here from Y to V it is gaining 2 hours, and from V to S it is gaining another 3 hours. So when it is 12 noon at S, it will be 5 p.m. at Y. So the answer you are looking at is option A. In this question, it is given that an article is marked X% above the cost price. So let us assume that the cost price is 100. Then the market price will be 100 plus X. A discount of 2 by 3 into X% is given on the market price. So the selling price will be 100 plus X, which is the market price, into 100 minus 2X by 3 whole by 100. This is the selling price. If the profit is 4% of the cost price, so selling price minus cost price is 4, therefore the selling price is 104, and the value of X lies between 25 and 50, then the value of 50% of X is. So let us solve this to find out the value of X, and then go ahead from there. If you multiply 100 on both the sides and expand the brackets, it will be 10,000 plus 100X minus 200x by 3 minus 2x square by 3 is equal to 10400. You can simplify this and take the terms to the other side, and you will get the following: 2x square by 3 minus 100x by 3 plus 400 is equal to 0. You multiply everything by 3, so this will be 2x square minus 100x plus 1200 is equal to 0. Now divide all of them by 2, so it will be x square minus 50x plus 600 is equal to 0, or x minus 20 into x minus 30 is equal to 0. This is a simple quadratic equation which can be factorized. So the value of x is either 20 or 30. But we are told that the value of x lies between 25 and 50. So x is equal to 20 is ruled out. Then the value of 50% of x is, so x is only 30, and we are required to find out 50% of 30, which is equal to 15. So the answer we are looking for is 15. In this question, we are given that there are two squares. EFGH is the bigger square outside, and ABCD is a smaller square which is inside if you look at the diagram. Now we are also told that ABE, BCF, CDG and DAH are all equilateral triangles. We are required to find out the ratio of EFG, this is the bigger square, to that of the smaller square ABCD. So let us assume that the side of EFGH is Y and the side of ABCD is X. Now we know that AEB is an equilateral triangle. So this is 60 degrees. So by symmetry, this will be 15 degrees, that is the angle HEA, and the angle BEF, this is also equal to 15 degrees. Why is this equal to 15 degrees? Because by symmetry, you know that the sum of all three angles, that is HEA plus AEB plus BEF is equal to 90 degrees. We know this because it's a square, and we know that AEB is equal to 60 degrees. So the sum of HEA and BEF will be 30 degrees. That is equal to 90 minus 60. But by symmetry, because all of them are equilateral triangles and squares, the only way this is possible is if both of them are equal to each other. So if their sum is equal to 30 degrees and both of them are equal to each other, both of them should individually be equal to 15 degrees. Now we know that we have assumed that each of the side of ABCD is equal to X. So side AB is equal to X, and EB, which is part of the equilateral triangle EBA, is also equal to X. That is, this line is equal to X. Now just consider the triangle B, E and F. We are saying that this is equal to X, this is also equal to X, that is BF, and we know that EF is equal to Y. These are things that we know. This is equal to y. The only triangle we are considering is this triangle. We are trying to consider this to get a relationship between y and x. Now we know that this is x and this is x and this is y, and we also know that this angle is equal to 15 degrees. Now if you drop a perpendicular from B to y, it will intersect it at the midpoint, because BEF is also an isosceles triangle, because this side BE is equal to this side BF. Now you know that simple trigonometry will tell you that x into cos 15 degrees is equal to y by 2, because this will be y by 2 and this will be y by 2. Now the equation that you are looking for, the required ratio is the area of EFGH to ABCD, that is y square by x square. Area of the square is square of the sides. So to get y by x, y square by x square, we'll first get y by x. This is equal to 2 cos 15 degrees, and y square by x square is equal to 4 cos square 15 degrees. We need to find out the value of 4 cos square 15 degrees. There is a simple formula in trigonometry which we'll use now, which is cos 2a is equal to 2 cos square a minus 1. So in order to find 4 cos square 15 degrees, we'll find out 4 cos square a from this formula is equal to 2 into cos of 2a plus 1. We are using this formula because we know the value of cos 30. It is known to everyone that cos of 30 degrees is equal to root 3 by 2. So over here we'll substitute the value of a to be 15 degrees. So 4 cos square 15 degrees, which is the required ratio, 4 cos square 15 degrees, which is the required ratio, is equal to 2 into cos 2a is cos 30 plus 1. So this will equal 2 into root 3 by 2 plus 1, which is equal to root 3 plus 2. So the required ratio is 2 plus root 3. In this question, a logarithm is given, log of 97 minus 56 root 3 by log of square root of 7 by 4 root 3. It looks complex on the first glance, but once you identify that 97 minus 56 root 3 is actually equal to 7 minus 4 root 3 whole square, it becomes very easy. Why would you identify this as 7 minus 4 root 3 whole square? Because you should first look at 97 and know that 97 is equal to 49 plus 48. And if you look at the denominator, it is 7 plus 4 root 3. So you should try to think if we can simplify the numerator in terms of 7 and 4 root 3. So 97, if you multiply 7 minus 4 root 3 with itself, it will become 7 square, which is 49, plus 4 root 3 whole square is 48, minus 2 into 7 into 4 root 3. This will become 97 minus 56 root 3, which is the numerator. Now in the denominator, the square root, we can bring it outside the logarithm by multiplying it with half. So the given fraction will actually become 2 into log of 7 minus 4 root 3, which is actually equal to log of 7 minus 4 root 3 whole square, whole divided by half into log of 7 plus 4 root 3. So you can bring the half in the denominator also to the numerator, and the numerator will become 4, and we can remove the denominator. Now again, if you look at log of 7 minus 4 root 3 by 7 plus 4 root 3, you should again remember that 7 square is 49 and 4 root 3 whole square is 48. So 7 minus 4 root 3 is equal to 1 by 7 plus 4 root 3. These are important fractions because if you multiply both of them, you are going to get 7 square minus 4 root 3 whole square, which is equal to 49 minus 48, which is equal to 1. So this is of the form x square minus y square, which is equal to x minus y into x plus y. So 7 minus 4 root 3 into 7 plus 4 root 3 is equal to 7 square minus 4 root 3 whole square, which is equal to 1. Therefore, the initial assumption that we made, that is 7 minus 4 root 3 is equal to 1 by 7 plus 4 root 3, is valid. Therefore, log of 7 minus 4 root 3 is equal to minus of log of 7 plus 4 root 3. Now when you divide both the logarithms, the resultant quotient will be minus 1, or log of 7 minus 4 root 3 by log of 7 plus 4 root 3, this entire thing will equal minus 1. Therefore the given fraction will be 4 into minus 1, which is equal to minus 4. So the answer in this case is minus 4. There are many ways to simplify this. As I was saying earlier, there are two important steps in this problem to simplify. The first thing is identifying 97 minus 56 root 3 as 7 minus 4 root 3 whole square. The second step is identifying that 7 minus 4 root 3 into 7 plus 4 root 3 is equal to 1. Once you have done both of this, getting the answer and simplifying this can be done within a minute. In this question, a trapezium ABCD is given such that the sides AB and CD are parallel. We are required to find out the value of sine of BAC by sine of BAD. So let us draw the trapezium slightly bigger so that we have a better idea of what it is. So this is A, D, C and B. We are told that these two lines are parallel to each other, and where the diagonal is also drawn. So we are required to find out the ratio of sine BAC to that of the larger angle sine BAD. To do that, let us first draw two perpendiculars from D and C to the line AB. This is the height of the trapezium. Let us assume that this height is h. Now in triangle BAC, sine of angle BAC will equal h, that is the opposite side of the angle, by AC, which is the hypotenuse. Similarly in triangle, this is say R1 and this is say R2. This is in triangle R1AC, this is sine BAC, and in triangle R2AD, the angle sine BAD, which is the larger angle, is equal to h, which is the height, and the hypotenuse is equal to AD. Now when you are required to find out the ratio of these two sines, you just divide h by AC whole by h by AD, and you are going to get AD by AC, which is equal to sine of angle BAC by sine of angle BAD. So the key to solving this question is drawing the two perpendiculars from D and C to the line AB. Once you are done, you are going to get the answer, which is very straightforward. In this question, it is given that there is a circular disc of radius 1 meter, and we are required to place the maximum number of points within this circular disc. The points can even be on the edge, such that no two points are less than 1 meter from each other. So the best way to do it, that is put as many points as possible on this circular disc such that they are at least 1 meter away from each other, is to place them on the boundary. So, and you have to place this at 1 meter away from each other, such that you can accommodate the maximum number of such discs. So this will be 1 meter, this will be 1 meter. So this will basically be a hexagon where each one of them is 1 meter away from each other. And you can also put one additional point which is at the center. So if you look at it, this is the best way in which you can place the maximum number of points such that they are not less than 1 meter away from each other. In this arrangement, the maximum number of points that you can put are 6, which are at the different points of the hexagon vertices, and 1 at the center. So the total number of points is 7. In this question, we are given two right angle triangles, OPQ and OAB. They form right angles at A and P and have a respective common vertex O. We are also given the lengths of each one of some of the sides, that is PQ is 1, OP is 2, BA is 1 and OA is 3. We are also told that AB and OP are parallel to each other. So these two lines are parallel to each other. Now we are required to find out the value of QOB. That is, we are required to find out the value of this. So to do this, first thing we will notice is that angle POA is equal to 90 degrees. So what we will find out is, we will find out the length of this angle, this is A, and say this is angle B. We will find out A plus B, what is the value of that. Once we find out A plus B, we will subtract it from 90 to get the value of C, which is what we need to find out. We need to find out angle QOB, which is equal to C. But we know that A plus B plus C is equal to 90 degrees. So we will find out the value of A plus B and subtract it from 90. Now tan A is equal to PQ, that is this line, by PO, which is equal to 1 by 2. Similarly, tan B is equal to AB, that is this line, by AO, that is this line. This is equal to 1 by 3. Once we know tan A and tan B, we will find out tan of A plus B, and from that find out A plus B and subtract from 90. So tan of A plus B, this is an important formula especially for that, which you can remember. Tan of A plus B is equal to tan of A plus tan of B by 1 minus tan A into tan B. So you can use the values that we have found out about tan A and tan B to calculate tan of A plus B. This will equal 1 by 2 plus 1 by 3 by 1 minus 1 by 2 into 1 by 3. 1 by 2 plus 1 by 3 is equal to 5 by 6 by 1 minus 1 by 6. This is also equal to 5 by 6. So this is equal to 1. So tan of A plus B is equal to 1. But we know that tan of 45 degrees is equal to 1. So we know that A plus B is equal to 45 degrees. From this we can calculate that C is equal to 90 minus 45, which is equal to 45 degrees. So the answer that we are looking for is 45 degrees. In this question it is given that ABC is an isosceles triangle. Let us first draw ABC. So this is ABC. It is told that AB and BC are equal and the length of AB is equal to x centimeters. Therefore, the length of AC is also equal to x. Let B denote the angle ABC. So this is B. Because this is an isosceles triangle, even this will be B. And sine B is given as 3 by 5. If the area of the triangle ABC is M, which of the following is true? So we have to find out a ratio, we have to find out a relationship between M and X. Let us first find out the area of the triangle in terms of X, and then we can calculate, we can equate it to M and see which of the 5 options is correct. Now the area of the triangle is height into the base B, half into B into height. This is the area. Area of any triangle is equal to half into base into height. Now we know that sine B is equal to 3 by 5. So from the triangle ADB, from this triangle we know that H is equal to x into sine small b. And we know that sine B is 3 by 5. So this is equal to 3 by 5x. Similarly, BD will equal B by 2, where B is the base of the triangle, which is equal to BC. Now again in this triangle ADB, we know that B by 2 is equal to x into cos B. As sine B is equal to 3 by 5, cos B will equal 4 by 5. Because sine square B plus cos square B has to be equal to 1. So you can calculate that when sine B is equal to 3 by 5, cos B has to be equal to 4 by 5. So B by 2 is equal to 4 by 5x. Using these two, we can actually calculate the area of the triangle. Area of the triangle is equal to half into B into height. We already know that B by 2, that is the length of BD, is equal to 4 by 5x. So this will equal 4 by 5x. Into the height, we again calculated this as 3 by 5x. So this is equal to 3 by 5x. But area of the triangle is given as M. So M is equal to 4 by 5x into 3 by 5x, which is equal to 12 by 25 x square. Now you can look at each of the options. 12 by 25 x square is equal to 0.48 x square. Now the first option says that M is less than x square by 4. This is not true. The second one says that M is between 3 by 4 x square and x square. This is also not true. The third one actually says m is greater than x square, which is also not true. Fourth one says that m lies between x square by 2 and 3 by 4 x square. This is also not true. The fifth one says that m lies between x square by 4 and x square by 2. This is correct because x square by 4 is 0.25 x square is less than 0.48 x square, which is the value of m, is less than 0.5 x square, which is x square by 2. So the correct option is option E. Okay, in this question we are given that P is the point of intersection of these two lines. Amongst these two lines there is a variable A which we don't know, and Q is the point of intersection of two other lines in which all the values are known. We are also told that the slope of the line joining P and Q is 2, and we are required to find out the value of A. So let us first find out the coordinates of the point Q. Once we find out the coordinates of the point Q, we'll try to figure out the value of A. So we'll solve the two equations. So 3x plus 4y is equal to 2018, and 5x plus 3y is equal to 1. This is the first equation and this is the second equation. We will first try to eliminate y, so we'll cross multiply the coefficient of y with the other equation. For example, in this case the coefficient of y is 3, so we'll multiply the first equation by 3, and in this case the coefficient of y is 4, so we'll multiply the other equation by 4. So 1 into 3, the first equation into 3 will be 9x plus 12y is equal to 6054. Similarly, the second equation into 4 is 20x plus 12y is equal to 4. If you subtract one equation from the other, you are going to get 11x is equal to minus 6050, or x is equal to minus 550. Once you have the value of x, you can substitute it in any one of the two equations. Let us try to substitute in the second equation. So 5x will be minus 2750 plus 3y is equal to 1, or 3y is equal to 2751, or y is equal to 917. So the coordinates of point Q we have just found out is equal to minus 550, 917. Now let us assume that the coordinates of point P are x, y. So we know that the slope of the line joining P and Q is 2. So y minus 917 by x plus 550 is equal to 2, or y is equal to 2x plus 2017. This is just simplification of the equation which we get by equating to the slope of the line PQ is 2. Now once we have this equation, this is one equation that x and y solve. This is the second equation that x and y solve. We will use these two equations to find the coordinates of x and y, and then we will substitute it in 3x plus 4y is equal to 2a to get the value of a. So once we have y is equal to 2x plus 2017, this 2y is equal to 4x plus 4034. Now we will substitute 2y over here, so it becomes 2018 minus 7x is equal to 4x plus 4034, or 11x is equal to minus 2016, or x is equal to minus 2016 by 11. Once you have x, you can find out the value of y, which is equal to 2x plus 2017. So this will be minus 2 into 2016 by 11 plus 2017. This is the value of x and this is the value of y. We'll substitute it in the given equation. 3x plus 4y is equal to 2a. So the value of 2a will be 3 into this number plus 4 into this number. That will be the value of 2a. So this will be minus 3 into 2016 by 11 minus 8 into 2016 by 11 plus 4 into 2017. So you can calculate that this is equal to 4 into 2017 is 8068, minus these two actually simplify to minus 2016 because this is 3 by 11 and this is 8 by 11, minus 2016, this is equal to 6052. This is the value of 2a. So the value of a will be 3026. This is a very calculation intensive question, There probably will be another way in which we can solve it without as much calculation, but at the end of the day, if you're not making any mistake, you will be able to get this question correct. So the answer in this case is 3026. In this question, it is given that there was a shopkeeper who arranged a stock of apples that he had in a triangular format. By triangular format, the first row will have 1, the second row will have 2, the third row will have 3, and so on. Now, after a point of, and he was selling it, he was selling all the apples from the top down. So first he was clearing of the first row, then he was clearing of the second row, and so on. After a point of time, there was a customer who came and saw that there were 126 apples when she came to buy. And we are supposed to find out the number of rows that were remaining when the customer came. So it was also given that the initial number of apples did not exceed 150. If we assume that the number of rows initially were n, the total number of apples that were there will be 1 plus 2 plus ... plus n. This is equal to n into n plus 1 by 2. Now we know that this is greater than or equal to 126 because that was the number of apples that she saw after the shopkeeper sold some apples, and it is also less than or equal to 150. This was given to us in the question. So using this we can get a sense of what n is. So if you multiply all the numbers by 2, we are going to get an inequality which says that 300 is greater than or equal to n into n plus 1 is greater than or equal to 252. Now 252 is close to 16 square, that is 256. So we will first assume that n is equal to 15. If n is equal to 15, n into n plus 1 will be 15 into 16. This is equal to 240. Now this is not satisfied because we need n into n plus 1 to be between 252 and 300. So n is not equal to 15. Now let us assume that n is equal to 16. In that case, n into n plus 1 will be 16 into 17. 16 into 17 is 256 plus 16, that is 272. This falls within the window. So one of the options for n is that n is equal to 16. Now let us assume that n is equal to 17. Then 17 into 18, which is n into n plus 1, 17 into 18 will equal 289 plus 17, which is equal to 306. Now this is greater than the highest bound, so n can't be 17 or any number above it. So the only valid number for n is that n is equal to 16. So initially in the triangular row there were 16 rows of apples, and the total number of apples that were there initially will be 16 into 17 by 2. This is equal to 17 into 8, which is equal to 136. So the initial number of apples that were there were 136 and they were in 16 rows. Now by the time the customer came to purchase, there were only 126 apples. That means 10 apples were sold off already. After the first row is sold off, there will be 1 apple which will be sold off. After the second apple, 2 more apples, that is a total of 3 apples are sold off. After the third row is sold off, 3 more apples are sold off, that is 3 plus 3 is 6 apples are sold off. And after the fourth row is sold off, 6 plus 4, that is 10 apples are sold off. So from 136 apples, 10 apples are sold off after 4 rows are sold off. So the first 4 rows will contain 10 apples which are sold off, and the remaining 12 rows will contain 126 apples which are remaining. So by the time the customer comes, she sees 126 apples and the number of rows that she sees are 12. So the answer that we are looking for is 12. To solve this, we have first calculated the number of rows that were there initially. There is only 16 which is a valid number of rows. Once we have found out that there were 16 rows, we found out that there were initially a total of 136 apples. Once we knew that it was 136 apples, we figured out that 10 apples were sold, because 136 minus 126 is 10. So if 10 apples are sold, it means that the first 4 rows are empty. And if the first 4 rows are empty, there are 12 rows remaining. So the required answer is 12. In this question, it is given that C is a circle of radius square root of 20 centimeters. L1 and L2 are 2 lines given by 2x minus 1 is equal to 1 and x plus 2y minus 18 is equal to 0. L1 passes through the center of the circle and L2 is a tangent to the circle at the point of intersection of L1 and L2. So let us first draw the diagram. The reason we draw the diagram is because we'll get an intuitive sense of what the information given looks like, and it makes it easier for us to understand what is exactly needed. So this is what is given. This is L1, it passes through the center of the circle O, and this is L2, it is tangent to the circle at the point of intersection. If A and B, A comma B is the center of the center of the circle, which of the following is a possible value of A plus B? We'll look at it. Let us first calculate the point of intersection. From the point of intersection, let us calculate the coordinates of the center and then try to see what we can say about A plus B. So the two lines are 2x minus y is equal to 1 and x plus 2y is equal to 18. We can easily solve them by multiplying the first equation by 2. Then we can cancel off y. 4x minus 2y is equal to 2. We can add both of them and we'll get 5x is equal to 20 or x is equal to 4. Once we know that x is equal to 4, we can conclude that y is equal to 2x minus 1, which is equal to 7. So the point of intersection, that is the tangent point, is 4, 7. Now we know that the center lies on the line L1, that is on this line. So let us assume that the point is a, 2a minus 1. We know that this point lies on the tangent. So even though it is a, b, we can easily conclude that from the equation of the line that 2a minus b is equal to 1 or b is equal to 2a minus 1. So we'll assume that the center is a, 2a minus 1. Now let us solve for a. How are we going to solve for a? We can solve for a because we know that the radius of the circle is square root of 20. So we'll calculate the distance between the center and the point of intersection, that is this tangent, and equate it to the radius of the circle. So we know that a minus 4 whole square plus 2a minus 1 minus 7 whole square is equal to the square of the radius, which is 20. Now we can simplify this by saying that a minus 4 whole square plus 2a minus 8 whole square is equal to 20. We can easily solve this because 2a minus 8 is 2 into a minus 4. So this will be a minus 4 whole square plus 4 into a minus 4 whole square is equal to 20. This is 4 because we brought 2 outside the bracket and we had to square it. So it becomes 2 square, which is 4. So this is 5 into a minus 4 whole square is equal to 20, or a minus 4 whole square is equal to 4. Now there are two cases possible. One case is a minus 4 is equal to 2. The second case is a minus 4 is equal to minus 2, or a is equal to 6 or 2. When a is equal to 6, b, which is equal to 2a minus 1, will equal 2 into 6 minus 1, which is 11. When a is 2, b will be 2 into 2 minus 1, which is equal to 3. So a plus b will equal either 6 plus 11, which is equal to 17, or 2 plus 3, which is equal to 5. Now we can look at the options and we can see that the option 17 is there, but the option 5 is not there. So the correct answer is 17. It is asked that which of the following is a possible value of a plus b. So a plus b can be either 17 or 5, but because 5 is not there, we will select 17 as the correct answer. In this question we are given two graphs. One is a pie chart and one is a bar graph. The pie chart represents the percentage of students from different departments in a college and in a university, and the bar chart represents the number of students who have already opted for physics major in the college. So let us first put the data that is given so that it becomes easier for us to calculate later. So the data that is given is history is taken by 10%, economics eco is taken by 12%, chemistry is taken by 14%, maths is taken by 16%, physics is taken by 18%, engineering is taken by 20%, and others are 10%. If you total it, you are actually going to get 100, which is 10 plus 12 is 22, plus 14 is 22 plus 14 is 36, plus 16 is 52, plus 18 is 70, 70, 20, 90, and 10 is 100. So this is the total percentage, which is 100%. Now if you look at the physics major, In Delhi there are 18, in Mumbai there are 36, in Kolkata there are 80, in Chennai there are 40, Hyderabad has 23 and others has 28. So you can again total them up to find out the total number of physics students. This is important because immediately, as we already know the percentage of physics students, we'll get the total number of students in the college. So this will be 18 plus 36 is 54, 54 plus 120 is 174, 174 plus 51 is 225. So the total number of physics students are 225. They constitute 18% of the university's total strength. So that 18% is 225. 100%, which is the total number of students in the university, will be 225 by 0.18. This is equal to 25 by 0.02, which is 25 into 50. This is 1250. So the total number of students in the university is 1250. This is the information that we can deduce based on the information that is given. Now let us look at the questions that are given. The first question says, how many students major in chemistry? We have found it already that the total number of students in the university is equal to 1250. We found this because the total number of physics students is 225 and they constitute 18%. So we have figured out that the total number of students is 1250. Now the chemistry students, the percentage of chemistry students is 14%. So if you want to calculate the number, it is 14% of 1250, which is equal to 14 by 100 into 1250. We can cancel 50 from both. This is 2 and this is 25. So this is 7 and this is gone. So this is 25 into 7, which is 175. So the total number of chemistry students is 175. Now let us look at the second question. If the proportion of physics majors who are from Delhi is the same as the proportion of engineering majors who are from Delhi, how many engineering majors are there from Delhi? So the percentage of physics majors in the institute is 18% and the percentage of engineering majors in the institute is 20%. Now we are told that the proportion of physics majors from Delhi, that is 18, is the same as the percentage of engineering majors from Delhi. So if we assume that this is x, 18 by 18% will equal x by 20%. We can calculate it, we can simplify the calculation and we can find out that x is equal to 20. We can do it in a multiple number of ways, but this is the way in which I find it to be quite easy, where we don't need to calculate the total number of physics students or the total number of engineering students. We can just calculate based on the individual respective percentages. Now let us look at the next question. 12% of all students are from Chennai. What is the largest possible number of economic students that can be from Chennai, rounded off to the nearest integer? So as 12% of all students are from Chennai, we have calculated already that the total number of students is equal to 1250. So the number of students who are from Chennai is equal to 12 by 100 into 1250. If you simplify, you can find that this is equal to 150. Out of this 150, we know that 40 of them are majoring in physics. So out of the 150 students, 40 of them are majoring in physics. So the maximum number of students from Chennai who are majoring in economics is 150 minus 40, which is 110. So we are assuming that all the remaining 110 students are majoring in economics. So that is, if you are considering only the students from Chennai. Now, if you look at the total number of economic students, this is again 12%. So this is 12% of 1250, which is equal to 150. So we know for sure that there are 150 students in the university who are majoring in economics, of which the maximum number of students who can be from Chennai is 110. So the required percentage is 110 by 150 into 100. You can simplify this. This is 2 and this is 3. Again, we are cancelling of 50. So this is equal to 220 by 3, which is approximately 73.33%. Now, as you have to round it off to the nearest integer, the nearest integer to this is 73. So the answer that you are looking for is 73. In this question, we are told that a computer can either be sold for 19,200 rupees cash, or it would take 4,800 cash as initial payment and 5 equal installments. Let us assume that the equal installment is K, or 5 equal installments. Both of this, they are saying, will cost the same. The rate of interest is given as 12% per annum. So these are 5 monthly installments. This is at the end of 1 month, this is at the end of 2 months, this is at the end of 3 months, 4 months and 5 months. And the rate of interest is 12% per annum, which will be 1% per month. Now we are required to find out the amount of each installment. So we are required to find out the value of K. There are many ways to do it. We'll calculate the difference in the cash flow. So initially, if in the first time he is paying 19,200, in the second method he is paying 4,800. So this would amount to initially taking a loan of say 14,400. This is basically 19,200 minus 4,800, 14,400, and repaying it at the end of every month by paying K, and K. So if he is paying equal installments of K at the end of every month, it would be the same as taking a loan of 14,400. So if you look at it, at the end of 5 months, 14,400 would pay him 14,400 into 1.01 to the power 5. This is the amount at the end of 5 months, is equal to K into 1.01 to the power 4. This is from the first month. From the second month, there are only 3 months remaining, so it will be plus K into 1.01 to the power 3 plus K into 1.01 to the power 2 plus K into 1.01, and the last K, there is no time period, he basically pays it back at the end of 5 months, so it will be plus K. If you simplify this, if you just divide 14400 into 1.01 to the power 5 whole divided by 1.01 to the power 4 plus 1.01 to the power 3 plus 1.01 to the power 2 plus 1.01 to the power 1 plus 1.01 plus 1. This is basically we are taking K common in this entire product. Then you are going to get the value of K. If you simplify this, if you can use your calculator and find the number, you will understand that it will be something close to 2965, which is the correct answer. In this question, we are given a function f of x, which is equal to x plus 4 into x plus 6 into x plus 8 dot 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 into x plus 98, and we are required to find out the number of integers for which f of x is negative. So before we go further, let us first find out the number of terms in the given product. X plus 4 is the first term, x plus 6 is the second term, x plus 8 is the third term, and x plus 98 is 98 minus 2 by 2, which is equal to 48. So x plus 98 is the 48th term. So there are a total of 48 terms in this product. Now if f of x is greater than minus 4, all the terms will be positive. So the entire product f of x will be positive. Similarly, if x is less than minus 98, all the terms will be negative, and hence the product of 48 negative terms will be positive. So for f of x to be negative, x has to lie between minus 4 and minus 98. So x has to lie between minus 98 and minus 4. Now let us write down the numbers from minus 4 to minus 98 and see for which of these numbers is the product f of x negative. So if x is equal to minus 5, then x plus 98 is positive, x plus 96 is positive, every term until x plus 6 is positive, but only x plus 4 will be negative. So it will have, if you look at the number of positive terms and the number of negative terms, 47 of the terms will be positive and 1 term will be negative. So the entire product of the 48 terms will be negative. Similarly, if x is equal to minus 6, one of the terms, that is x plus 6, will be 0. So the entire product will be equal to 0. If x is equal to minus 7, the number of positive terms will be 46. There will be only 2 negative terms, which are x plus 4 and x plus 6. Therefore, the entire product will be positive, because the product of 46 positive terms will be positive and the product of two negative terms will be positive, so this will be positive. Similarly, if x is equal to minus 8, the product will be 0, as x plus 8 will be 0. And once x is equal to minus 9, you will have 45 positive terms and 3 negative terms, and hence the entire product will be negative. So here you can observe a pattern. F of x is negative whenever x is equal to minus 5, minus 9, minus 13, and so on, and the last term will be minus 97. Now to calculate the number of terms in this, you can just subtract 1 from 97 and divide it by 4, because the common difference is 4. This is equal to 96 by 4, or 24 integers. So the number of integers for which f of x is negative is 24, and those numbers are given in this series, minus 5 to minus 97. This is a data sufficiency question in which we have two positive integers m and n whose product is less than 100. So we have two numbers m and n. We know that m into n is less than 100. We are given two statements. The first statement is that m into n is divisible by 6 consecutive positive integers. The second statement is that m plus n is a perfect square. Which of the two statements above, alone or in combination, shall be sufficient to determine the numbers m and n? So we require to find out the integers m and n. So we'll first try to solve it using only statement 1, then we'll try to solve it using only statement 2, and then we'll use both the statements and then see which of these is needed to solve and find out the values of m and n. So let us first use only the second statement, that is m plus n is a perfect integer. Using this, we can't really go anywhere because we just know that m into n is less than 100. So m plus n can actually be 9 or 16 or 25. It can be any perfect square. We can easily find two integers m and n such that m plus n is a perfect square and then their product is less than 100. Just to give you an example, suppose m and n are 6 and 3. Their product is 18, which is less than 100, and their sum is 9. Or you can assume that m and n are 7, 2. Again their sum is 9, their product is 14, so their sum is a perfect square and their product is less than 100. So using statement 2 alone, we can't go anywhere and we can't figure out what are the values of m and n. Now let us look at the first statement. The first statement says that mn is divisible by 6 consecutive integers. So mn is divisible by the LCM of the 6 integers, which is j plus 1 into j plus 5. So these are 6 integers. Now if you look at it, the smallest such 6 integers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and their LCM is 60. Now if you take any other 6 integers, their LCM will be significantly greater than 100. For example, if you look at the next one, which is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, the LCM of this is 420, which is greater than 100. You can find any other 6 integers, their LCM will be greater than 6 consecutive integers, their LCM will be greater than 100. So the only possible numbers for those 6 integers is 60. Why is that 60? Because we know that mn is divisible by all the 6 numbers. So mn is divisible by the LCM of those 6 numbers, and only one set of 6 integers exist such that their LCM is less than 100, which is 60. So we know that mn is divisible by 60. We also know that mn is less than 100, and so the only factor of 60, only multiple of 60 which is less than 100 is 60 itself. So from the first statement alone, we can conclude that the product mn is equal to 60. And the integers j plus 1, the 6 integers that we were discussing, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Now based on this statement alone also, we can't figure out the values of m and n, because m and n can be 60 and 1, m and n can be 30 and 2, or 20 and 3, or 15 and 4, or 10 and 6. For all of them, the product is equal to 60, and which is less than 100, and for all of them the product is divisible by 6 integers, consecutive integers 1 to 6. But if you combine the first statement and the second statement, then you can figure out that in all of these pairs, the only pair where the sum is actually a perfect square is when the numbers are 10 and 6. in which case m plus n is 16. In the earlier case when they are 15 and 4 it is 19, 20 and 3 is 23, 30 and 2 is 32, 60 and 1 is 61. All these 4 cases m plus n is not a perfect square. M plus n is a perfect square only in the final case when the numbers m and n are 10 and 6, which is equal to 16. So using statement 1 alone, we can figure out that mn is 60, so m and n should be one of these 5 cases, but we can't go further. Using statement 2 alone, we don't do a lot of progress. We just know that m plus n is a perfect square, but m and n can take multiple values. But once we combine both of them, we can conclude that m and n should be 10 and 6. They can either be 10 and 6 or 6 and 10, but we know that the numbers m and n, the set m comma n, has to be 10 and 6. So using both the statements, we will be able to figure out the values of m and n. This is a data sufficiency question. In this, we are given information about a bag which contains marbles of 3 colors, red, blue and green. It is mentioned that there are 8 blue marbles. So there are red marbles, there are blue marbles and there are green marbles. We are told that there are 8 marbles which are blue in color, and we are given 2 statements. This is the first statement and this is the second statement. We are required to find out which of the 2 statements we need to answer how many green marbles are there in the bag. Now let us look at each of the 2 statements individually. We'll try to figure out if we can find out the number of green marbles in the bag using each of these statements individually. If you are able to find out the answer, then we are done. If you are not able to find out, we'll try to use both the statements together and then try to find out the answer. So let us look at the first statement. If we pull out marbles from the bag at random, to guarantee that we have at least 3 green marbles, we need to extract 17 marbles. So what it says is, if we extract a total of 17 marbles, only then can we be sure that there are 3 green marbles. So what it means is, if you add 8 plus 3, there are 6 red marbles, so that 8 plus 6 is 14. So in the worst case scenario, when you are taking 14 marbles out from the bag, all the 14 will be non-green. So you'll have 8 blue marbles, which is already given. So the number of red marbles in the bag should be 6. So that once the 14 marbles are taken out and you take 3 more marbles, then you are assured that the 3 marbles that are taken out are green. So suppose if you have 7 red marbles, for example, then in the worst case scenario, when you take 17 marbles out, you will have all 8 blue marbles out. You will have the 7 red marbles also out. So that is 15 marbles are gone, and the number of green marbles is only 2. So because this is not the case, the statement which mentioned this, that once you extract 17 marbles, you can be assured that there are at least 3 green marbles, would imply that 8 plus 3, that is 11. So the number of red marbles is 17 minus 6, which is 17 minus 11, which is equal to 6 red marbles. But you don't know the number of green marbles. The green marbles can be 3, they can be 4, they can be 10, they can be anything. You just know that there are at least 3 green marbles, and you know that the number of red marbles is 6. So using the first statement alone, we can't say for sure how many green marbles are there. We can say for sure that there are 6 red marbles, but we don't know how many green marbles are there. They are just 3 plus x, where x is a positive number. Now let us look at the second statement. It says that if we pull out marbles from the bag at random, to guarantee that we have at least 2 red marbles, we need to extract 19 marbles. So what it says is, you have 8 blue marbles, which is already known. Now if you extract 19 marbles, you are sure to have at least 2 red marbles. So what it says is, the number of green marbles is 9, because 8 plus 2 is 10, and once you subtract 19 minus 10, you are going to get 9. Because after you extract all the blue marbles, in the worst case scenario, when you are trying to minimize the number of red marbles that are taken out, so the first 8 marbles that you take are blue, then the next 9 marbles that you take are green. Now you have exhausted all the green marbles. So whatever marbles you are going to take out now will be red marbles. So once you take 2 more marbles, they will be red, and the total will be 19. So using this statement, you can figure out that the number of green marbles is 9. Remember that you can't figure out the number of red marbles in the bag using this statement. You can just figure out that there are at least 2 red marbles, but you don't know how many red marbles are there. So based on the second statement alone, you can figure out that the number of green marbles in the bag is 9. So to answer the question, we just need statement 2, we don't need statement 1. That is the answer.